Can you take me back to that time, describe what was going on at Rotterdam, and how, in the end, did you come up with the decision not to quit?
I was never very interested in what other people thought because I was actually interested in what I know. I realized
you were exploiting the sexiness factor.
Well, I wasn't exploiting it, but I just realized you could see the followers growing. We had a world saying you should turn into some kind of selfish guy who doesn't care about anyone else.
We have a voice message from somebody that you describe in the book. So have a listen.
Jay, Nolsey here.
Jeroen Hertzberger, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome to this first episode of this new podcast called The Midlife Crisis. This will be a podcast in which I'll be interviewing different people around big themes in their life relating to their career, sports, health in general, about careers. And this is to really help people and support people in how certain individuals have made big decisions in their life and how they also look forward to the rest of their lives and how they want to make decisions going forward. So those will be the themes for today. And
Thank you.
Really happy to have you here to kick off this first episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be the first guest. So it feels really special. And I'm excited for today. So thanks.
Cool. To kick us off, can you maybe give a bit of context as to why certain people that are listening might already know who you are, and maybe also for the benefit of people that don't know who you are yet?
Okay, so quick intro, elevator pitch intro. Short version. At first, people would know me because I'm an athlete. I'm a professional field hockey player. I've been active in 3 Olympic Games. I've played for the Dutch national team for 14 years, over 250 caps. So that's the first main reason why I think people might know me. I've never been the type of person that only performs as an athlete and for the rest sits at home and waits for the next training session or game to come. So I've always been trying to start little businesses. I've been doing that since I was younger. I've had a business in underwear, garments, and sports gear. I'm now into YouTube. Officially, I can call myself a YouTuber, which I've been doing for 3 or 4 years. And I have a business in online courses. So I'm a little bit of everything. I'm a keynote speaker. I've written a book. I actually do too much for the amount of hours there are in a day. But yeah, I really enjoy it. So my main thing is that I'm a professional athlete. And for the little few hours that I have left in the day, I like to call myself an entrepreneur a little bit. So, and a family man. I have 3 kids, a dog. Anything else? Need to know?
Name of the dog?
Boof. Yeah,
which translates to?
Which translates to, it's a little bit the real translation is like a crook. So it's
criminal?
Like a cheeky crook, like a bad criminal.
Is that also how you see yourself?
Yeah, in name and character. And they always say the dog looks like their boss.
Like their owner?
I think the resemblance is a little bit there, yeah.
And can you maybe take us through some of the highlights and lowlights that you've had in your hockey career? I mean, we'll get to the other businesses that you were just mentioning in a minute, because those tie very much into personal branding and the fact that you've taken some of your hockey skills and kind of transferred those into other digital businesses, which I think is very interesting. But can you maybe first sketch as a professional athlete, like what you've been through from the beginning of your career, moving from Austria to the Netherlands, and how that has kind of formed you as an athlete?
Yeah, so compared to other hockey players my age, I would say that I was quite late to reach the top. Let's put it that way. I grew up abroad. I am part of what's known as an expat family. My dad used to work for Unilever, and we lived in Africa, in Congo. We moved to Budapest. We lived in Vienna. And then when I was 16, I came back to the Netherlands. And hockey is not a very big sport in the countries where I grew up. In Holland, it's a big sport, and worldwide, it's quite spread out. It's still a small sport. We obviously can't compare to football, tennis, golf, or any of these other big sports globally. But still, hockey is quite big, especially at an Olympic level. It's one of the best watched venues at the Olympics. And like I said, I was quite late coming to the top. I played football till I was 16 and hockey, and then I made a choice when I was 16 to go for hockey.
Can we maybe zoom in on that moment for a second?
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I always wanted to become a football player. I had the luxury, which many kids now don't, of playing 2 sports until I was 16. Now kids feel like they have to choose at a young age one of the 2, even though I always like to support doing as many different things as you can. So I have 3 kids. My oldest is 8. He plays hockey. He plays soccer. He plays basketball. He plays tennis, golf. I try and take him and do as much as he can because, first of all, you don't even know if he's going to be interested in high-level sports when he's 14, 15. And on the other hand, I think it's just really good to get a really wide spectrum of different activities. I always say I don't care what he does as long as he's not lazy. Yeah. So that's my thing. For me, it was quite simple. I wanted to play in packed stadiums. So for me, my goal in life was not to make a lot of money. It was not to be on the cover of any magazine. For me, it would have been the same of being either a rock star or a superstar on the pitch. Yeah. Because packed stadiums is a feeling that I think you don't really get anywhere else. So at a certain point, I had to make a choice. I had the opportunity of going to a professional football club at 16. And then, it was a gut feeling. And I think my parents might have pushed me towards the hockey side a little bit because we all know the soccer world is one with a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential to earn a lot of money, but the talent pool is really big and the percentage that succeed is really small. And I think in hockey, it might be a bit easier to get to the top. So we made a decision to go for hockey. And then my mother said maybe it's a good idea to move back to the Netherlands and so on and so on. Because
you mentioned in your book that you got an offer to come play for a team, for a professional football team in Vienna.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very pivotal moment in your hockey career, at least, because you did make that decision at that time to go and play hockey, especially in the Netherlands. Yeah. Can you take me back to that time and kind of explain... you mentioned the role of your parents there, that they kind of pushed you towards hockey. Can you remember whether that was more your own decision or whether at the time, being the age that you were, you kind of let yourself be advised by your parents in that sense? Yeah, I mean, come on. I don't know if you remember when you were 16.
Not really. There's no real rational decisions to make. No. I mean, we're busy with school. We're busy with girls. There's alcohol. There's that first cigarette that's in front of your nose. Okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to smoke it or not? You know, those are the things that happen when you're 16, 17. Luckily, I was not the typical guy that do video games. Like, I know gaming is a huge thing when you're 16, and for some reason, it just kind of passed me by. I mean, I had my fair share of Nintendo and Mario Kart and a bit of FIFA on the PlayStation.
You were outside playing with the ball.
I was just not really interested in gaming, which I'm actually quite happy with, because maybe I'm a little bit old-fashioned in that way. I like to just go outside and play. No, but when I was about 12 or 13, the Liverpool Football Academy, they approached my parents at a soccer tournament, and they wanted to talk to them about me going to the Liverpool Academy. My parents never told me about it, and they just said, okay, we're not going to do that. We're not going to send my son to England to go to the Liverpool Academy. And my dad was always into academics. He always thought it was important to study. If I wasn't performing in school... he said, okay, if you're not performing in school, we're not going to go out and train. You need to succeed on both levels. And the reason for that is that my dad was a pretty good golf player, and he could have gone professional, but he chose to go for an academic, like a career in business at Unilever. And he might have some... That's why I think he really enjoys watching me, because he also thinks, okay, this is maybe the career that my heart said I wanted, but my mind told me I also have to choose for safety and security, and he chose for a career like that. But I had that selection training at 16. I just didn't really like the vibe that was around the soccer world.
You described that in your book.
Yeah, and we had a really angry trainer at that test training, and I performed okay. And I think you have to build some kind of resilience to adapt to any situation, and the volume of words, they're only words, and they're not allowed to affect your performance. And I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and my brothers and my sister had already left the house, and I think my mother was ready to go back to Holland. and she knew that if we were to choose hockey, then maybe we could go back to Holland. And you know how it is. I believe that your surroundings, if I look back now, my brothers were hockey players, my sister played hockey, my parents played hockey. It would have been a weird situation if I would have tried to go for professional football. And then I probably also wouldn't have joined the university that I did. I wouldn't have maybe joined the student fraternity that I joined where I met you. Yeah, I mean, it would have all affected my future. And I think looking back now, I'm curious to see how far I would have gotten in the football world. I think with my mindset and mentality, I think I could have gone professional. But then again, there's a difference between bottom second division and Champions League. And that's why I think looking back, I'm in the top 10 of Holland's history when it comes to games played and goals scored, with only 2 other players. So I think I can say I made the right decision. And then
moving to the Netherlands, being quite late to the Dutch hockey system.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain how those first few years went and what kind of the pivotal moments were to really kickstart your Dutch hockey career?
Well, first it was straight through the roof. So I came back to Rotterdam, and my brother had arranged that I could train with the under-18s at Rotterdam, which is one of the biggest clubs in Holland. And I was in the team in no time. They saw my ability, and I was allowed to join the team. And then within a week, my coach called the district team. He said, "I've got a player for you." And they said, "Yeah, we can't because the squad's full." He's like, "I have a player for you." And I had to join on Monday on that first practice. We played a practice game against another district team, scored 3 goals, and boom, I was in that team. And then within 4 months, I was in the Dutch under-18 team. So we're talking 12 months. Choice from football to hockey, and within 12 months in the Dutch national under-18 team, which might have been the best under-18 team in the world at that point, because the Dutch are just pioneers when it comes to hockey, and we're just up there with the best in the world. So I was cloud 9. So things were going perfectly.
You'd made a good decision.
I made a good decision. However, I grew up abroad, which allowed me to learn how to play hockey. A lot of ball contact. Technically, I was right up there. I could score, I could shoot. I was an offensive midfielder or a striker, whatever you want to call it. And but then tactically, I was not very aware. I wasn't the best passer. I was not defensively. I was quite poor, and I got dropped from the under-18 team, which was actually the first time that I actually experienced a huge disappointment a setback in my well, I couldn't say career yet because I was 17, but in my life, and it really hit me. So I remember teachers from my school calling home and saying, "What's wrong with Jeroen?" Because he's been staring out the window for a week and he hasn't said anything. They thought something was going on, and my parents were like, "Yeah, never mind. He's
not very smart.
Yeah,
Jeroen is kind of behind.
Yeah, exactly. There's something wrong with Jeroen. He was like a Rain Man looking out the window. Yeah. No, but I was just really disappointed, and I really thought, okay, this is not part of the plan. You know, my plan was to come back to Holland and to dominate and show everyone that I'm the next best thing. You know, I wanted to go straight through the roof, and I had big dreams. And then, getting dropped and having a setback like that is really tough. And until now, the coach that dropped me, we always make jokes that he's an idiot because he obviously doesn't know what he's doing. Because
have you ever seen him?
I've seen him walking around a little bit, but I don't think he has the guts to talk to me because he's like, "Oh shit, okay, so Jeroen is in the top 10 of goal scorers and caps of all time, and I dropped him from the under-18 squad." Yeah. What was I thinking? But he wasn't wrong. So I was just late to the stage,
late to the party.
And I don't know, there's these theories about 10,000 hours of practicing your skill. So let's say 20 hours a week for a whole year, and then for 10 years comes about to 10,000 hours. People say you need it. I don't necessarily believe in that 10,000, but what I do believe is, and I was late to the show because I'd only started playing hockey when I was 10, even though all my whole generation started playing hockey when they were 6. They just had a 4-year head start. Yep. And then even me growing up in Vienna and Budapest, learning how to play hockey pretty much only with the ball and nothing else. To give it a little bit of a vision on what it's like, my hockey club in Rotterdam have more hockey players than all of Austria. So you just can't compare. There's like 1,000 hockey players in.
You mean more than all of the hockey players there are in total in Austria?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in Austria there might be 1,200 hockey players. My hockey club has 2,000 players.
Yeah.
So you just can't compare.
Different proportions.
Different talent pool. We couldn't play 11 against 11 in Vienna because we just didn't have enough players.
No.
I think that just shows you can learn how to play, but it's just not enough. Because the funny thing is that the team that I got dropped from when I was 16, the under-18 team, that was in 2002. And in 2008, I made my debut for the national team in Beijing in the Olympics. I was the youngest in the squad. I was 22 years old. So in those 6 years, I was dropped from my generation, but in the 6 years after that, I had caught up, and I had actually, in that race, I had ended up going past them and being the only player to be selected from my generation in the 2008 Olympics. Yeah. So I was just late to the show. I needed a few more years to gain some hockey IQ, as I would call it. In those 6 years, I had learned that the disappointment that I felt and the transition from a setback and turning it into something positive, working harder, training, not blaming anyone, but focusing on yourself, then you can really catch up and maybe even surprise yourself. Because I'd never thought that I would have been the only player from my generation to be in the Olympic roster.
To make that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big theme for this discussion as well, and maybe we can touch on it later. I mean, that resilience piece around having setbacks and then staying focused and staying determined to still reach your goal. Yeah. Because I think that that's a real theme through everything that I read in the book and some of the things that you've gone through. Yeah. But I want to go to back to a moment where you started playing for Rotterdam. Yeah. You were in the first squad, but you were also very often still in the second squad. Yeah. So you weren't always playing in the first squad, which was probably also a disappointment. And I can remember a moment where we were sitting together at the university in Rotterdam. Yeah. And there were a bunch of us, I think 4 or 5 of us, and we were having a bit of a discussion about what you should do at the time.
Yeah, I think I remember this.
And you were actually thinking about quitting, or you were at least exploring the option of potentially quitting and throwing your stick away, because you'd also started doing other things. Like you just said, you joined a student fraternity. You saw that there were other things to enjoy in life, and you were starting to doubt, or there was a bit of some doubt creeping in whether it was worth it. Can you take me back to that time, describe what was going on at Rotterdam, and how, in the end, did you come up with the decision not to quit?
So this is an interesting period in my life, actually, because it might have been make or break at that point. And there were a few factors that played a role. So I'm 16 and I get dropped from the under-18 national team. Yeah. And I was 19 when I got selected for the under-21s. And this moment that you're referring to is before that. Okay. So let's say I'm 18. My club is playing at the bottom of the, not even the first division, one below. I'm on the bench most of the time, and I'm even playing in the second team. And still I'm telling my friends I'm going to make the Olympics. Yeah. And everyone's like, okay, you're an idiot. Yeah. What are you talking about?
You were were you actually already telling people at the time that was what you were going to achieve?
Yeah, so the problem was I was playing, I wasn't a bad player, but I also wasn't, usually if you're 18 years old and you're a good player, you get selected for a national under-21 squad. And I wasn't. But it also had to do with the fact that Rotterdam, my team, was just not very good. No. And even in that team that wasn't very good, I wasn't playing. So I even had to go...
That doesn't look well, right?
Doesn't look well.
Not good optics.
So they're not going to select you. No. And I was playing in the reserve second team on Sunday mornings. So I'm there. I'm not playing. I have this dream of making the Olympics. But I remember telling my friends, even if I have to play in the second team, I need to go home early because I want to perform, because I have this dream. I want to make the Olympics. Yeah. And people are like, you're in the second team. Come on, let's go to the bar. Yeah. You know? Like, stop. Yeah. Let's have another one.
The pressure becomes even bigger if you're not delivering.
And this is, I think, a really crucial part, especially for people who have an ambition to make it in high performance, is that there are going to be moments where you think, okay, I don't see light at the end of the tunnel. I don't see it happening. And people around you are going to say, look, man, it's not going to happen. be real, like be realistic. People like to say that, come on, be realistic.
Yeah.
And
it's also a very Dutch thing, probably, right?
Yeah. I mean, and the funny thing is, it even brought me to the moment to saying, okay, maybe I should just quit this whole thing, get myself a university degree, get myself a job, enjoy having beers with my friends, and then go for the mainstream life.
Of course.
But then there's this little voice in my head saying, yeah, okay, wait, but your dream is to be to play in packed stadiums. Your dream is to go to the Olympics. Your dream is to make the Dutch national team and become a world champion or European champion or whatever. And within it was about a year and a half, I really made that decision to really say, okay, if I want to go higher up, I don't need to talk to anyone. I don't need to ask anyone for advice. All I need to do is I need to make sure that I show everyone that I'm too good for where I'm playing now. And then all of a sudden, within 12 months, a few interesting things happened. So my Rotterdam team promoted to the Premier League. That was one thing. I started getting more playing minutes. And after we promoted to the Premier League, I was selected for the Dutch under-21 team. And it's funny how things work. So at one point, you're in October, and you think, okay, fuck this, I'm quitting.
Yeah.
And the next moment, you're 6 months on. And then all of a sudden, you're in the under-21 national squad, which is an opportunity. And you're in the Premier League. And all of a sudden, you have this summer to work on your game and really go quickly. And we all know how quick young players can rise. And it happened to me. I had an amazing summer with the under-21 team. I had been dropped from the under-18 team, so I was really dedicated to say, okay, this is never going to happen to me again. And I really my level went up. I'd had those conversations with you about quitting. Well, I'd parked those somewhere in the back of my mind, saying, okay, but this opportunity, I'm going to go for it. And yeah, I came into the new season. I was in the under-21 squad. Our Rotterdam team and that's the luck I might have had. My Rotterdam club really invested in the first men's team. There was a financial boost. Many new players came in. I was able to learn from international stars, and our team just went through the roof. We went to the top of the Premier League, and we played top 6 for 10 years in a row.
Yeah,
and
you got into the picture, basically.
I got into the picture,
yeah.
But I also showed that I belonged there. And in 2007, I was, after the under-21 journey, I was the first Rotterdam player ever to be selected for the Dutch national team. So we're talking about on a time frame from 2002 to 2007, in 5 years, where this roller coaster of ups and downs, under-18 teams, yes, I'm in, no, I'm out. Under-20, first men's team, I'm in, but I'm on the bench. Oh, second team, shit, another setback. Up, oh, under-21, boom, 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 and all of a sudden, bang, Olympics. So within 6 years, I'd gone through this roller coaster of not only going from a boy to a man, so I'm going from 16 to 22. I'm also going from, I don't know what I want with my career, to all of a sudden being the youngest player in the Dutch Olympic roster. And you know how that is. We all love watching the young guy in the team. I mean, when we watch football, we like watching Jamal from Spain. Barcelona. He's young, he doesn't care, he doesn't think. I was that guy. And yeah, it's just amazing. I think that's why I really love high performance sports, or high performance in general. There's so many ups and downs, and you can, at one moment you want to quit, but you need to find that mindset to say, okay, I'm going to keep going. And then I think you can achieve great things, maybe even bigger than you can imagine. I would have never imagined when I was 18 that I was going to become the top scorer of all time in the Dutch Premier League, yeah. and getting 3 Olympics and 250 caps. Yeah, so... And
let's maybe zoom in a bit more on those Olympic, let's say, adventures, and also the lack of those adventures, as you were dropped from the Dutch squad a few times.
Yeah.
But before we go there, just linking back to what you were just saying, when you go through that roller coaster in life, and maybe many of our listeners are going through that roller coaster at the moment, they're not sure about what they want to do. They've kind of half invested into something they're doing now. They don't know if it's the right thing. Yeah. They don't know if they should double down on that at the moment, or whether they should choose something different, right? They have people around them telling them that what they're aiming for is maybe not the thing that they should be aiming for. Yeah. How did you stay on that path throughout that time? Did you talk to other people about what you were thinking? Were there certain people that were important for you at the time that helped you stay on that path? How did you start to create a way to make those decisions and stay confident with what you were doing?
So I think the main thing, and I don't know if it's something that I was taught or something that is just inside of me, is that I'm quite, so I'm humble because I don't think that I'm very good at certain things. So, and I think it has
You don't always look that way, right? If you see you on the pitch, you think overconfident.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Right?
Yeah.
A bit aggressive.
Maybe on the edge of arrogant.
Maybe on the edge of arrogant or way over it. But like, so you don't see yourself that.
So self-confidence and arrogance is a fine line. And the funny thing is that what I wanted to say is I was never very interested in what other people thought because I was actually interested in what I know. And where that comes from is that my dad, when I was dropped from the under-18 team, he always said, yeah, okay, life's not fair, get used to it, you know? Might sound a bit like, okay, it was not a very loving thing, but it was actually a very loving thing because he's right, you know? And that comes from focusing on things that you can control. Because I'm not an athlete in athletics, I'm not a sprinter. No. So it's not like, okay, if you're fast, and then you win, and then you go to the Olympics and you make it to the top. You know, it doesn't work like that in team sports. In team sports, you rely on others. There's coaches, there's physios, there's managers, there's teammates, there's the weather, there's, I don't know, referees. You know, there's just a really big luck factor. So because there's such a big factor of things you don't control, all you can really do is focus on things you can control. And I think that's where my strength is. So I kind of taught myself that I have this switch that when the whistle blows and when the game starts or when a practice starts, I can sort of switch to a mentality, okay, now I just simply focus on things that I control. And things that have nothing to do with being a good player or not. It means working really hard. I really believe that I was always the hardest guy on the training ground, the hardest worker. Yeah. I would never stop running. I'd never complain. There's always guys wearing hats and gloves when it's cold. I don't wear that, you know. Why would you wear a hat and gloves? It doesn't make any sense. Stop being, you know. Yeah. It's a form of resilience that I think I taught myself after being dropped from the under-18 team, that I said, okay, from now on, I'm going to focus on things that I control, and I'm going to be the hardest worker in the room. And I don't want to let go of my dream ever again. And it doesn't mean you'll always succeed because, like you said, I was dropped from the Olympics as well. I played 3 Olympics, and in my opinion, I should have played 5. But that's just the way things go. Some things you can't control. And it's not always sunshine. I mean, you're going to have these lows, and that's going to happen. But I think the key is to, even if you have those doubts, your daily motivation is just really hard to listen to. Yeah. And that sounds like a cliche, and it's all over social media, daily motivation, blah, blah, blah.
Ice baths.
Motivation is actually, might even be the poison for anyone with a dream, because motivation is different every day. I mean, you wake up sometimes thinking, okay, today I'm going to rule the world. And the other day you're going to wake up and think, you
want to stay in bed?
Stay in bed, Netflix, give me a cup of coffee. I don't want to get out, don't want to take a shower. Yeah. And this daily motivation, I found a way to say, okay, I don't care how I feel. I care about the dream. And I learned that I don't know where the finish line is, but all I can do is take a step every day closer to my goal and then hope that I get there someday. And that's pretty much the only thing you can do. And it sounds really simple, and I know it doesn't work that way because we always have these daily emotions that the way we feel, and of course we get insecure. And I don't like reading in the newspaper that I played a shit game. No one likes to read that. And I don't like a coach giving me criticism. But if you can find a way to always negative things coming from outside, which it calls for negative emotion, if you can try and turn those into something constructive, saying, okay, I want to improve, I'm going to take this. Feedback is for the receiver, we always say. Not for the one giving it, but the guy who is receiving it. Take it and do something with it, and just try and improve every day, and really try and blind out all the bullshit of things you can't control. So, for example, there's a lot of people that think, okay, I'm going to go in today's game and I'm going to play really well. I never think that, because how can you go into a game where you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what type of game it's going to be, you don't know what the opponent's going to do, you don't know what the weather's going to do. Maybe the referee hates you today and is going to blow everything against you. Maybe the coach is going to take you out in the second half and substitute you. So there's so many things that you don't know that are going to happen. So just go into a game, turn on that switch, and try and focus on the things that you can do really well. And for some reason, that really helped me, not only to play well, but it also helped me to handle stress and pressure much better than other guys can. So you never get surprised when things happen. So whenever something happens that is weird, I just raise my shoulders. I'm like, okay.
You embrace it.
It's just in that category of things I don't control. So I can ignore them, and that allows you to focus better. And if you focus better, you can perform better, and you don't worry too much about things going on around you. And I think that really helped me. And you learn that from setbacks.
Yeah.
Because
so that helped you become resilient and helped you become, let's say, able to deal with things that weren't going your way.
Yeah, because if you get a setback, people always they play this this self-pity card, and they want to blame the world for everything that happens. But no one cares. No one cares.
No one cares.
I got dropped from the national team after playing 200 caps. For 2 years, no one called me. Maybe 1 or 2 guys, but no one cares. No. If you're out, you're out. That's just the hard reality.
Were you hoping that somebody would call you and would be more empathetic to your situation?
Well, when you get dropped from a team, what you want is for everyone in the team to say, "Oh, why did you get dropped? This is bullshit. You should be in the team." But people are there for themselves as well, and you can't really blame them. And I imagine if someone else gets dropped, I'm not going to stand up and say, "Oh, this is nonsense. Erbe should be in the team. Come on, put him back in." That's just not how it works.
No.
So what you learn is that I'm not saying you should turn into some kind of selfish guy who doesn't care about anyone else. But when it comes to the craft, to the skills, you need to find a way to get that switch, the focus switch of saying, okay, I'm going to focus solely on things that are going to contribute to me becoming a better player.
Yeah.
And a better person and a better teammate.
Because in the book you describe that when you were dropped the first time for the Olympic team, which I think was London in 2012.
Yeah.
You wrote down that it was one of the most difficult moments in your career, but it was also a moment where you learned something about yourself and that it actually acted as a bit of an inspiration source for you going forward in maybe the second half of your career. Can you explain that a bit more?
Well, I think it was, in general, getting dropped from London was really tough. It was one of the hardest moments in my career. But it was also, you can get dropped from a squad and for a big tournament, shit happens. Especially when it comes to the Olympics, there's not many spots and it's a puzzle to create a team that can win. And I always wanted to place myself in the shoes of the coach, also on the positive side, because you want to be a person that a coach can rely on. So you want to put yourself in the position that the coach is saying, okay, I want to win Olympic gold. Who am I going to take? Who can I rely on? Who are the stable guys? Who are going to perform for me? And that's the type of person you want to be. Not in an ass-kissing way, but just in the way, okay, what is the type of player that I want to see? And I believe that I was that going into London. And it was just the way that it happened. So I'll just tell a short story about it. So 3 weeks before the Olympic Games, the coach writes down 12 names on the board that are safe for the Olympic roster. And there's 16 spots. So 2/3 had been announced, roughly. And I was on that list. So I was like, yes, my whole family had booked tickets, hotels,
Family Hertzberger had spent some money.
Yeah, exactly. They had spent money on going there. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to my second Olympics. And he said, you're safe as long as you remain in form, whatever that means, We're 3 weeks prior. We only have a few training sessions and 1 practice game. Yeah. And how are you going to now? Okay, whatever. It was vague. So we went out. I even scored one of the best goals in my career in one of the training matches against England prior to the announcement of the actual squad. And there were like 8 guys fighting for the last 4 spots. And I was actually being really supportive to those 8 guys. I was trying to be a good team member, trying to say, okay, come on, take these next few training sessions. I tried to tell them just what I talked about, that switch. Yeah. Whenever you get into training, outside trainings can be fun and laughter and everything. But once the first ball rolls, you got to be focused. Your first reception has to be perfect. You try and get that first shot on goal. Really try and up your focus level in every training session. Because it's only an hour and a half, It's not that hard to focus for an hour and a half. And then, 2 weeks later, I get a phone call saying that I'm not in the team after all. And I mean, I can explain now why I didn't make that team because of things changing, people playing in different positions, captain roles, speciality roles, a couple of ass-kissing roles, a bit of politics, and the whole thing just caused me to get dropped. And like I said, what you mentioned is true. It was a really big disappointment for me because I really felt like I should have been in that team. I was even told I was one of the top 3 strikers in that team, but I wasn't being selected. So what are you going to do? Sometimes circumstances that you don't control affect the outcome. And but it also taught me that okay, so you cannot just rely on your feeling. You have to make sure that you make another step, and you're not one of the 3 best strikers, but you're the best striker. So they really cannot not take you. And that was really the lesson for me. And even after that, I had a choice because I really felt like that was supposed to be the peak of my career. 26 in the Olympics. First Olympics, I was young, and now I really wanted to make a difference. But that really taught me that I can't go into a tournament saying I want to be the guy that makes a difference. Yeah. It doesn't work like that, especially not in team sports. Only thing I can do is work hard and try and make another step up and really improve my level. And there's a certain thing in my career that every time that I had a really big setback, the year after, I really came back really strong. And that's something I'm really proud of because it's a combination of a work ethic, so upping your work ethic, being a little bit angry maybe, and wanting to really prove the world that that you belong there and that you're one of the best. And a certain resilience that you just don't care about what other people say anymore. Yeah. When you have a certain setback, whether it's in private life, you really want to get to the core values of what you believe in, and you just don't care what other people think. Yeah. And I think not caring what other people think is a really important factor in high performance.
And often those people aren't, thinking about you or aren't judging you in the way that you probably think anyway, right? So
exactly, spending
time on those kind of thoughts is just not very useful.
I mean, the cliche of people saying people are at a higher level than you will never hate on you for trying something. It's always people
at a lower.
Yeah. Because they're kind of jealous. They actually want to have your guts. Yeah. And they choose the safe road. And then they want to criticize you whether you have a new business idea, saying, oh, yeah, you're going to do that? That's never going to work.
Yeah, okay. We all recognize that, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. And there will never be an entrepreneur that has been successful that will tell you, don't do that, that's never going to work.
Don't try it. Yeah.
Unless it's a really shit idea. Yeah.
And we've all had plenty of those probably as well.
Exactly. But we leave those at the bar,
I want to move on a bit from your hockey career because I guess a lot of people know you for playing hockey, right? Yeah. And don't know the other side of you, at least from a career perspective. You were just referring to that you started a company called Thunder Sports, which is, of course, in undergarments for sports. And I guess a lot of people are also curious about, well, you're 20 plus years in the hockey space now. I mean, you're not that young anymore, right? You won't. That career won't live forever.
Nope.
What's next? I mean, I bet you get that question very often.
Yeah.
How are you thinking now about what you will do once you do stop playing hockey? How are you going about that? Are you having discussions with people? Mm-hmm. I guess it's kind of the $1 million question. And when I talk to others about you and the fact that we were doing this podcast, that's kind of what people are curious about. How do you go about that?
The funny thing is, I'm going to ask you a question, but it kind of depends out of which, what are you basing the question on? Because 9 out of 10 times people ask you the question, so what are you going to do when you finish playing hockey?
Yeah, and because you don't have any options. You are only a hockey player.
But it's usually a financial question. So people worry because hockey is not like football. I mean, you can make some money. I think of all the hockey players, I think I'm the one who showed that you can make a lot of money playing hockey, and if you invest it well, you can actually set yourself up quite nicely for the future. So I think investing wise, I think I made a few smart moves. Might be a business idea for other athletes that I should maybe start. But for me, continuing as long as I have, I've already kind of gone through that phase. So usually when athletes reach 30, they start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do after my athletic career? Yeah. Because say you're in your 20s, you might be in university, you might be studying, you might be doing a bit of this, a bit of that. And then once you finish that, there's a couple of years where you focus on your athletic career. And then when you go towards 30, 32, you start thinking, okay, maybe I need to be doing something with my life. Otherwise, I'm going to get lost compared to my generation. But because I've been continuing for so long, I've already actually passed that moment. So it's funny that people ask me the question because I've been setting myself up for the future ever since I was 28.
And how have you been doing that? Like, which steps have you taken to do so?
Well,
you obviously do Hertzberger TV, right?
Yeah.
In which you have videos on certain skills for hockey.
Yeah. So to take you one step back, when I finished university, I thought, okay, what am I going to do? I want to be this professional athlete, but a part-time job next to being a professional athlete is really tough. In some parts of the year, it could work, but mainly it couldn't because, to give you guys an example, the Dutch national hockey team spends about 190 days in the year together. And that could be abroad or in Holland, but it's 190 days. So, I mean, do the math. It's quite hard to really do something next to 190 days. So my choice was to start a business, not to make money, but just to learn. So I had to teach myself what it's like to actually be working, in my case, running a business.
Which business was that?
Yeah, so my thesis for my degree was a business plan for Thundersports, my undergarments business. So back in the day, and people listening now can't imagine, but...
I have one here, by the way.
Yeah, you have an old one.
Let me get one.
I
bought, I think, the second collection, which was pretty shit, but
Yeah.
I still wear it now as I'm training for an Ironman. So I use this quite a bit.
So
but,
they used to be white.
They used to be white. Now it's a pretty dirty, sweaty gray.
No, so I had a quite interesting. So 20 years ago, well, not exactly 20 years ago. Let's say in 2010, the undergarment business was not what it is now. So now everyone has one of these lying around, and whether you go skiing, whether you go running, whether you go to the gym, everyone has these tight compression gear lying around.
Yeah.
But 15 years ago, it was not like that. So only the people who were really into serious skiing or into mountain climbing or really into low temperatures, they had thermal gear. And that was changing. I saw Under Armour was the first brand to start doing it. They had made a really smart move by taking over Hollywood. So in any movie you saw compression gear, it was Under Armour. And they were dominating the market, but there was a huge gap between the A brands and like the cheap, shitty ones.
Yeah.
And I wanted to jump in between. And it was actually a really cool process. I gathered a few Olympic athletes and we designed these products together. And I still think we produced some of the maybe even better products than some of the A brands, but obviously we didn't have any power, we didn't have the time. I didn't have the time enough capital to really double down and say, I was at a certain point, I thought, okay, if I want to make something of this, I need to quit playing sports and I need to really focus on this and go all in. And then maybe it would have had potential to grow.
But I guess it did at the time open up your eyes, and I guess that's where you're going to, that there is a life next to hockey and you were able to learn things outside of hockey.
The funny thing is, though, that in this period was also the period where I got dropped for the London Olympics. And I always wonder if the one has to do with the other. Because one thing that I have learned is if you want to succeed at something, it needs to be priority number one, and focus is key.
So it was a bit of a benefit in disguise.
Whether you like it or not.
Retrospectively.
Yeah. Whether you like it or not, if you're focused on other things and being an entrepreneur and starting a business, it brings stress. Whether you like it or not, I had ordered collections that had to be here today, and they were supposed to arrive at the Rotterdam harbor, and they arrived at the Hamburg harbor. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? Yeah. And I had to arrange phone calls. Oh, shit, I need to hang up because I have practice. It doesn't work ideally, but then again, for me, it was a cool challenge because I realized there's more than just hockey. But I was always able to keep my high-performance sports career above my business. And it was just a cool way to learn, okay, how does this work from a operations part? How does it work from a sales part? How does it work from a marketing point of view? How am I actually going to create brands, R&D? I was doing everything. I was a one-man band. So I was with my left hand, I was playing the piano. With my right hand, I was doing the drums. Yeah. And everything was going through. And then I had to drop everything because I had to go to practice. So I was not only a one-man band, I was like a one-man orchestra within several businesses. But such a cool time. And I really enjoyed making the products. It really helped me to learn, okay, this is what is asked of someone to not only run a business, but to really work this hard, to wake up being focused on the work that needs to be done. Obviously, it's different than if you just have a job somewhere and you're working 40 hours a week, and whenever the clock hits a certain time, you drop the pen, close the laptop, and say, okay, my next worry is tomorrow. Because if you start a business, you take it to your bed, which is maybe a certain stress level that obviously I could handle, because I've had more stress in sports than with any business. And there was not a lot of risk, so I didn't have a lot of money in it. So it was just a cool way to learn how to work, and not only being that athlete that wakes up in the morning with his coffee and saying, what should I do until practice? That wasn't my style.
No.
So I really like to learn. And
how did that lead in the end now to, for example, Hertzberger TV, which is of course one of your latest?
So at a certain
companies?
point, I because my career as a hockey player is successful, I really felt like the brand I had created as a person, that I had to do something with it. Because I realized, for some reason, it was around the World Cup in 2014 when Instagram came onto the scene and Facebook was growing. I realized that either I was quite likable, or the girls liked to follow me. I don't know what it was, but I realized
A sexiness factor.
I realized
you were exploiting the sexiness factor.
Well, I wasn't exploiting it, but I just realized you could see the followers growing. We had a World Cup in The Hague in 2014, which was one of the coolest tournaments I've played. And it was the start of social media. And I just saw that in my following, that I was getting way more followers than other players. And obviously, at first, I thought it was because I was a good player. But then I also got fan mail. And then I also, the autographs after games, there are some players, no one wanted their autograph. And I had like 40 people who wanted my autograph. So I saw a certain rise in likability. And I saw, okay, wait, hold on. Don't forget, you were the youngest guy in Beijing. People saw that. You're now one of the strikers making goals. You're reaching high level of caps. You're going towards records. You're breaking records. Yeah. And then I thought, I need to do something with this brand that I've created. And I also talked to entrepreneurs in my surroundings. And they said, look, Jeroen, you've created a name for yourself within this hockey world. Yeah. Maybe you should see what the potential is. And then I was inspired by Tuzani, who has one of the biggest football YouTube channels in the world, where he did really cool stuff with other football players. He did tricks, he did challenges, he did all kinds of stuff, tutorials. And I thought, okay, this doesn't exist in the hockey world. Maybe this is something that we could do. And YouTube was obviously coming onto the scene as being one of the newest channels that you want to be on. And I decided to just start Hertzberger TV, more a bit of as a joke, not really from a business idea, but just from saying, okay, maybe there are kids out there who want to learn how to play hockey and they want to be entertained. And there was nothing like it on YouTube. Everything that was made by phone, and it just, the audio was shit and the video was really bad. I was like, okay, I'm gonna make sure I have video quality, audio quality, and I'm just going to be one of the top players telling people how to shoot backhands and forehands and how to eliminate people. And I'm going to invite other top players, and we're going to do challenges, and I'm going to ask him about his personal life, and I'm going to take a drive with him, and I'm going to get on the pitch with those players. And all of a sudden, I started growing, and within 2 years, I was the biggest hockey YouTube channel in the world.
And how many followers does it have now?
So now we're near to 100,000 subscribers, and there's not really anyone else doing it. So there are a couple of YouTube channels, but not the way I do it. And so what I've done is I've always been comfortable talking in front of a camera, and I enjoyed presenting. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to go with it. And then now we try and make one video a week. I make tutorials, we do challenges. And yeah, we're the biggest, I call it entertainment and learning channel for hockey. Yeah. So I like to entertain, but I also try to teach. So I'm also doing it for the next generation. And so Hertzberger TV was born, and I'm still working on it until today.
Yeah, funnily enough, I was recently listening to another podcast, and there was a very famous entrepreneur, a guy called Daniel Priestley, and he actually talked about this, how he sees one of the big mega trends at the moment is that individuals start building up a personal brand, and you can do that through a lot of different ways, right? Yeah. But he says if you then take that personal brand and you link it to an elegant business model, that is a very powerful combination in which in this day and age, in this new digital economy, you can kind of set yourself up for success. So taking your skill set, the one that you have crafted over the last 20 years, and then turning that into intellectual property and coupling that to media, the way that you've done with your movies on Hertzberger TV.
I mean, it's pretty much what's happening now is because of social media, it's quite easy to create a following. And if people are interested in what you have to say, and you have the knowledge and you have the expertise, then it's quite easy to create a following, because a niche, people don't hide for what they're interested in. So a niche is created much easier than, let's say, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, people might have been interested in things, but they just didn't know that they were. So now what you can do is you can create a personal brand. You can create content teaching people or entertaining people within that niche. And then if that following becomes larger and larger, then all of a sudden it's quite tempting to create digital products and try and create a bit and turn it into a business.
Yeah, and anybody can do this, right? I mean, you don't need to be famous to create content about something you're interested in. Like I said,
the algorithm doesn't lie. So things that you are interested in, you can see it when you look on your For You page. It tells the truth. And whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's dance, whether it's animals, whether it's cooking, whether it's motivation, your For You page doesn't lie. It's what you're interested in, unless you actively try and sabotage your algorithm, which some people do sometimes because they don't want to be confronted with the truth. Yeah. So if you look at mine, I'm interested in sports, I'm interested in motivation, I'm interested in fitness, I'm interested in skiing, golf, women, music, dance. You know, that's the stuff that I like.
Yeah.
And if there's someone who can pull me in and entertain me and says, okay, Jeroen, this might be cool content for you, and then they might create a digital product, maybe I'll buy it. Yeah. And because it's a worldwide thing, and anyone with an internet connection can jump in that niche, I mean, I'm taking the same path. So I'm doing pretty much the laid out road. I created a YouTube channel. I've got an Instagram page. I have this big funnel. And now I have these online courses that I've made, because I really want to try and turn that following and really create something valuable for them to become better hockey players. And it's not only because I want to create a business, I want to make money. Yes, that's it as well. I mean, I have 3 kids, got to make money.
Yeah.
It's also because my sport, hockey, is always on the edge of losing its Olympic status. And I want to try and make sure that worldwide people stay interested in hockey, because if we can do that, then we'll never lose our Olympic status. And I think that's one of also the key things that people don't know, but it's also one of the reasons why I do what I do. And these online courses, I really want to help kids especially, or young coaches in areas where there's not much expertise. Because the problem with hockey is pretty much all of the main expertise is in Western Europe. Yeah. Even though it's a big sport in Australia, it's a big sport in Malaysia, it's a big sport in Japan, South Africa, Argentina, Canada, US, UK. So we have a big spread, and we're really a global sport. And I want to try and keep it that way. And it's just a lot of fun because I can go out there, I can share what I know, I can talk to the camera in a comfortable way.
Passion.
I can share my passion. And so I've taken my name that I've created in 20 years in this world hockey stage, and I've tried to create credibility with my results on the field. And now I'm trying to teach kids and young coaches and parents maybe all over the world by just in front of their iPad or their laptop or iPhone. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. It's a big challenge because I'm going through a barrier. Online courses in the fitness world and in other sports are really big, like grow a 6-pack in 6 weeks, you know, like there's so much online. But when it comes to a ball sport like football or hockey, there's not many online courses available. So it's a barrier that I have to go through, but I really want to keep pushing and see where it can lead to. Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting thought, again, for the listeners as well, that you were just saying, you know, where do you have a certain area of credibility? Yeah. Where do you have an area where you have interesting thoughts or where you can share your ideas that might be interesting for others?
Yeah.
And try to take those ideas and try to take that credibility and share it with the world in whatever mechanism or via whatever vehicle you feel comfortable with, whether that's through text or whether that's through video or whether that's through podcasts or.
The funny thing is, I mean, especially the central theme of this podcast is people are getting older. And let's be honest, if you have a healthy set of brains, you should be fine financially, and there's always going to be a job out there for you that is going to allow you to survive and do your thing and have a house living in where we live. However, you also start to think, once you get older, I'm 38, you're going towards 40, you're going to think about, okay, I'm on this planet. I've done things that I like. I've done the right thing, maybe gone to school, gone to university, got my degree. But what now?
Yeah.
That's
why it's called the midlife crisis.
Exactly. So what is the main reason for your thoughts? And one of the things that I spoke to a person that I really admire, a friend of mine who has a podcast as well, and he thinks about the reason why we make choices. And he said a really good conversation that you can have with your wife or with your best friend or with your father or with your brother is say that you are ill and you're on your way to the doctor. And the doctor says, I have good news and bad news. And the good news is that you have at least 5 years to live. And the bad news is you don't have 10. So take that situation, go home and talk to each other about, okay, what am I going to do when someone tells me I have 5 years to live, but maybe more than 5, but I don't have 10 to live? What am I going to do with my life? What are the things that I really want to do? And because what happens then is there's this switch. So we have this, I always call it a comparison society. So we always want to compare. It's like, oh yeah, what kind of car do you have? Oh cool, where'd you get it? How much does it cost? Maybe I can get it. Maybe do my kids fit? I don't know. You know, there's all these things. We always compare. Our wives are especially very good at it. Not to say anything.
Not to bash the female
exactly.
gender.
So when I get home, my wife might be like, what are you talking about? No. What I'm trying to say is people always want to compare, but once you get that question where you say you might have don't have 10 years to live, all of a sudden you start thinking about you. You start thinking about, okay, what is my desire? What do I want to do with my life? Especially if you get that question, okay, say you win the lottery and you win 30 million. Okay, first you go out and buy all the toys you want to buy. Yeah, so once you get that house, you get that car, you get everything you want, you have that boat or whatever, house in Ibiza or whatever you like. And then, so you still have 20 million left. Then what? What are you going to do? I mean, you ask 100 people on the street, what do you do if you win the lottery? 95 are going to say, quit my job. Okay, so what does that actually mean? Yeah. It's a really interesting question to ask your loved ones and to think about, okay, what am I going to do, especially with this midlife thing? What am I going to do in the next 40 years of my life if I even am lucky enough that I'm going to have another 40 years? Because nowadays you just don't know, and it sounds really depressing, but you might be dead next year, you know, and you can't obviously go out and sell everything and spend all your money because you have people around you and you want to give something to your kids. You want to make sure you don't throw everything away. You can't be that one guy who sold all his possessions, went to Las Vegas and put everything on red. Yeah. You can't be that guy. Even though I kind of admire his
you would want to, but it's not going to work.
Yeah, I don't even know if he won, but I don't know. But yeah, so these are just really interesting things to think about. And lately I've been talking to people in my network to try and learn from them and to really find out not only what does the world expect me to do when I maybe quit hockey, what are the things that I like to do and what am I good at? Because those are two things that you don't actually know. No. If you've had a life in high performance sports, or you've had a life as an actor, or as a cook, or as a DJ, or as a football player, hockey player, once you step out and you go and you look at other things, you don't know what you're good at. You might have a feeling you do. People might say you might be good at that, but it doesn't actually mean that you are. And I think
Can you give an example of somebody you've spoken to recently that has given you good advice?
Well, the funny thing is, once you approach people to just have a conversation and just to maybe chat about life in general, they're surprised because they think you want a job. But when you don't, it's actually quite good advice to go and talk to people at companies that you might be interested in without actually applying for a job.
Asking for a job.
Because they're going to really open their arms and say, of course, come have a look. Because people want to talk about what they do. So there's an ex-Dutch Olympian volleyball player, Peter Blanchet. He's now the director of sports at Rotterdam. So Rotterdam Sports, so the governmental organization. And he had some really good advice that he told me after he quit his career. And he said, all high-performance athletes think that once they finish their sports career, they have to get into their business world as quick as they can. And they need to jump in and catch up and make up for the years that they lost. And he said it's the worst thing you can do. Because what you're going to do is you're going to jump in, you're going to neglect all your other relations. And he says, I saw a lot of relationships breaking because someone feels they have to jump in, they have to get that job, they have to make a lot of money because they're 40 or 35. And he said, take your time. Don't necessarily commit to something for many years. Maybe just do something for 2 years and then see, do I like this? Is it giving me what I wanted to get from it? And go on to the next thing. He said, I did a bunch of stuff. He worked for the Dutch National Football Union. He was the coach of the Dutch volleyball team. He even worked at one of the football clubs. And now he's director at Rotterdam Sports, Topsport. So it was really good advice. And it was so much fun to hear from someone who's been there and has a really relaxed vision on how things are going. So for me, it's very... what's the word? It's tempting for me to jump into a coaching job within the hockey world, but a little voice inside says it's also the easy way out. So it would be quite easy for me to get a coaching job and then work my way up and become a head coach in hockey. But I'm also quite curious where my strengths are outside and try and widen my horizon, if that's how you say it.
Yeah.
So those are the things I think about. Also, having an own business, maybe if my business turns out to keep doing what it's doing now, maybe that could be a full-time thing for me. So I'm quite open and I'm not in a hurry to make decisions. Like I said, I've gone through that part where I reach 30 and think, what am I going to do now? I'm making more money outside my hockey career than in my hockey career for years already. So I'm quite relaxed about how things are going. And yeah.
Well, I mean, you're still playing hockey at the moment, right? So
Yeah.
it's something that doesn't need to be decided today, like you were saying. I think we'll follow that with a lot of interest to see what you're going to do after this. And of course, you're already doing things outside of hockey. So that's...
Maybe I'll start a podcast.
Maybe you'll start a podcast. Well, one thing you did do at least is you wrote a book, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we have it here on the table. The Dutch title is Presteren kan je leren. You're still thinking about an English title because it's going to come out in English.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe Mastering Performance. The actual translation is that my vision is that performing at a high level is something that you can learn. So it's teachable to a certain point, obviously. That's the discussion that I have in the book. And this is also a little bit a trip down memory lane. Everything I've experienced in 20 years of high performance sports, the lessons, and also the challenges, and also the advice and the tips are things that I added on in this book. It's actually not too much about hockey. It's not about my sport. It's more about if you have the desire to be in high performance, whether it's in sports or in medicine or in a DJ or an acting or whatever, you could read this and really, it's for the younger generation that really want to have a prestige life in high performance and want to learn a thing or two. And it was a lot of fun to make the book, actually. Yeah.
And then during our conversation, you already talked about a number of topics that actually are written down in the book, right? You said something about the ecosystem and the environment you're born in.
Yeah.
You said something around motivation in focusing on the goal rather than, questioning every day whether you have the motivation to do something. You talked about a number of different things. Are there any other lessons that you want to take, that you want to share with us from the book that you haven't mentioned yet, that you think are very important to kind of the position where you are now today?
Well, obviously, the whole world talks about discipline and consistency, like we're talking about bread and butter the whole day. And I thought it was quite interesting to jump into that, because what does it actually mean? People always see discipline as a dirty word, even though they're more valuable than you think. So those are, what I've done is I've taken all these subjects, whether it's discipline, whether it's consistency, whether it's team culture, whether it's performing under pressure. There's like 25 things to talk about, and we've turned them into chapters. And yeah, I think especially discipline and consistency is very interesting, but there's also a very interesting part, which for me is the most fascinating, is ratio and intuition. So ratio and intuition are an interesting phenomenon in our life, because on the one hand, we want to be our safety, and the fear in our minds makes us think about what we do. But the love in our heart says we want to just go out there and do what you feel like doing. And in sports, it's huge, but also in life, the bounce back and the comparison between your rational thoughts and your intuitive thoughts is actually something you deal with daily. And I think that's a really interesting subject to talk about. Not only to read about in the book, but also to talk about with your friends. Because, our safe mind says, think rational before you do. And think about, is this going to be a good thing for me? But the love in our hearts, the little kid in ourselves, in our mind, wants to be intuitive and wants to follow his gut and just go out there, not think and do. And I think that's just a really interesting part. So ratio and intuition, that's a cool part, which I had the most fun writing about. So
yeah, I think it's a really great book. I mean, I read through it quite quickly, and of course we already know each other, right? So it made it even more interesting. And we'll definitely put a link to the book where you can buy it in the comment section here under the podcast. So I hope a lot of people go and pick up this book.
Yeah.
Before we start rounding off, we have a little voice message from somebody that you describe in the book.
Okay.
That was a very big example to you at the beginning of your career, growing up. In the hockey world. So we'd just like to give that a quick listen to you and pass that message on to you via this headset. So have a listen.
Now I'm very curious. I'm a bit nervous.
Jay, Nolsey here. Congrats on an amazing career, mate. And of course, speaking on this podcast today is all around leadership. For me, mate, obviously met you as a younger player coming through the system in Rotterdam and the Dutch hockey system. I got to play against you in 2008, got to play with you, for Rotterdam. I think back on those times where we worked together with a group of really influential people at Rotterdam to drive high standards, to push the boundaries of what we wanted to achieve as a team, and how we brought together a group of young guys, a group of senior international players from multiple countries to win, unfortunately, but fortunately as well, the one and only title that Rotterdam has won in 2013. Mate, you were a pleasure to play with, pleasure to play against, and I wish you all the best in the rest of your career. Congrats, mate.
Yeah, that's really cool. Mark Knowles. Yeah, what a guy. Mark Knowles, for the people who don't know who Mark Knowles is, he's pretty much one of the best players I've ever played with or against. He's Australian, and he is. I was lucky enough that he's 2 years older than me, so he was on the world stage a bit quicker than I was, and I played with him at Rotterdam. Yeah, that's really. I'm a little bit. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that one.
A curveball.
No, it's very cool that you guys. That he was so friendly enough to do that. Now, like he said, I mean, in 2013, Rotterdam, and still the only title Rotterdam has ever won. And he was pretty much, I was the captain, but he was pretty much the captain on the pitch because from his role as a free defender. I mean, also in the book, I write about a certain level of professionality and also a certain level of creating a culture within a team. And he is just an example of how that really works. He is the example of how to create culture within a team. He is an example of how to create professionality in a team. Our team was not experienced. We never had top players in our team, and he really showed what it takes to go all the way with a team. And that's not even to start about the quality of his play. So him actually, he was the first person who said to me, we will win this championship on the days we don't train. And for me, that was very powerful. And I will never forget him saying that because he was just on and off the pitch. He knew exactly what he was doing. He found a way to be really demanding towards other players without being an asshole. So, so he found a way to really, if people made mistakes, he would let you know that's not the way we do things, but it wouldn't be in like a mean way. It would be in a constructive way where you're like, oh yeah, he's right. And because he always led by example, yeah, he's just, apart from being a really nice guy, he's just an amazing player and a really good leader. And I learned a lot from him. So that's a really cool message to receive. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Very cool.
Yeah, and in rounding off for this episode, Jeroen, I'd really like to thank you for coming. First episode of this new podcast, right?
Yeah.
The Midlife Crisis.
Yeah. Cool.
You're in that space now in your life where you've reflected on this amazing career you've had so far in hockey. You've kind of shared the different ventures that you also set up aside from hockey over the past few years that have kind of informed maybe your way forward, right?
Yeah.
And shared some of the ways that you think about life, you think about what is important to you, what your priorities are. And we're really eager to see what comes after hockey. And we'll be following you through either your channels or the podcast that you do going forward to see where that goes. So thanks a lot.
Yeah,
it was really great to have you on. And on to great things.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and good luck with the podcast. I hope things go well. It's a very interesting thing to talk about, and I'm sure many people will enjoy listening. So thanks.
Cool.